Welcome, everyone, to Hello, Ernest at the Kitchen Table, connecting writers and readers. I am Jan Pratt, the author of several children's picture books and also the author of a series of yoga lesson plans for kids.
And I am GaGa Gabardi. I'm a co-author with Judilee Butler. Together, we write the Phoebe Korneal Mystery Series. Join us for every episode as we connect readers to your next great read. Hello, Pam Torrens. Great to see you. Thank you for agreeing to come to the kitchen table and let's talk about you as a writer. Are you good with that?
I'm good with that, Gene. I sure appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. And for our listeners, I'd like to ask you a question about getting started. What inspired you to get started in writing?
Well, reading is what inspired me to get into writing. I grew up in libraries. My mother and father were both big readers, and I just grew up reading books and books and books. And when I went off and joined the military, I spent 30 years in the Air Force. That didn't change. I was reading, between 50 and 100 books every year my whole life. And uh, after I retired, of course, I kept reading, but I thought to myself, I've got this time. I've always been interested in writing. What if I tried to try to give readers something that I've enjoyed so much? I've got my favorite authors, and I wanted to give it a shot and see if I could put something out that the readers would be respond to. So
Okay.
reading got me into it.
All right, that's great. And isn't it interesting how the more we read, we pick up what other people are doing, and we can use it. We can style it. And was that good or did it not be good?
Oh, that's a great point. I always read growing up as a reader and not as a writer because I wasn't one. And it
Right.
was, like you point out, it was extremely interesting once I started trying to write myself, to all of a sudden read with a different eye and see what the author was doing rather than just lose myself in the story, which is what I tend to do.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I enjoy the story as well. And so all this reading, you decide to share your experience. And then what happened? How'd you get to the point? You have two books out now, or is it three?
I have two out and one coming out at the end of August.
All right.
So,
And so how did you get to the point of writing, especially that first book? Was there a trigger or anything?
well, I had always heard that writers ought to write what they know. And in my retirement, I thought, well, really, all I know is my military career. And I just really wasn't that interested in writing a military thriller. And I'll tell you that my favorite books are mystery, suspense, and thrillers. And so I knew that's what I wanted to write because that's what I enjoy so much. But there's a lot of people writing military thrillers, and I just wasn't up for it. And the only other thing I really knew was that, when I moved here to the Valley in 2019, I joined search and rescue. And so I'd been on it for a couple of years when I started writing. And so I started looking at some of these missions I was going on and saying, well, what would have happened if it wouldn't have turned out the way it did? What if something sinister happened? And that was the genesis of my books. They are not search and rescue books per se, but they always have a search and rescue B story going through them. My main character is a member of search and rescue out in the Arkansas River Valley, just like me. That's where the similarities end. But that's why I just started writing what I'm writing.
So that leads me to the question, is your main character Cam Torrens?
No, he's got hair. So
Oh, okay. Well, there's a difference, exactly. But as a reader, I often wonder, is this Cam's thinking and doing and experience?
there are parts of me in there. So Tyler Zahn, my main character, when he comes out to the mountains, he's a military contractor in Florida, kind of numb from a divorce and some family issues. And when he comes out, he's looking for a fresh start, and he's trying to figure out how he could serve again, kind of like he did in the military, where to do that and how he could do that, how he could be useful. And I felt that when I moved out here. I wondered how I would fit in. I wasn't looking for, paid employment, and so I was looking for ways I could volunteer. I started off on my homeowners association board, which is a wonderful homeowners association, but I will never be a HOA board member again.
Very smart from what I hear, Cam. Very
So,
smart.
So that wasn't it. But the more I got into the search and rescue, it was my niche. I don't have a lot of the skills that other search and rescue members have as far as high angle rock climbing or river rafting type stuff. I can get by on an ATV and I'm learning to do a snowmobile, but my biggest skill is hiking, and I'm useful because I can carry a lot of stuff on my back for a long distance. That's about what I bring to the table. And that's what Tyler Zahn does, except he keeps running into weird stuff. And he's good friends with the deputy sheriff here in Chaffee County. And they end up getting involved in figuring out the weird stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I love your stories. I love your stories.
Thank you.
But as I read, I keep seeing Tyler. Oh, maybe I should substitute the word Tyler for Cam. It sounds very exciting.
So it's been a lot of fun to write them. I actually have a prequel coming out in February of 2025 that will tell how Zahn got to where he got, because book one, Stable, which came out last summer, has him already in search and rescue, already on a mission, and strange stuff happening. And so the backstory shows up next February 2025.
Exactly. Oh, good to know. I'll be watching for that. And I do follow you, so I'm sure I'll see all the announcements coming up. I just saw the one recently on the next book in August. So I'm tuned in and ready for that one to be released. So thank you very much. Keep me going. You mentioned that you've always been a big reader, and like so many of us, we pick up different things. What are your what kind of authors are you reading that you prefer in suspense and thrillers?
Well, I've got almost two different genres within that category. The first one, and the ones I think that have had the most influence on my writing, are C.J. Box and Craig Johnson.
Oh,
So
yeah.
both based out of Wyoming, which I know your co-author, Judilee Butler, for your books, she lives up there really close to Craig Johnson's neck of the woods.
Exactly,
And
in Buffalo.
right, right. And so I love CJ Box, and he's got a game warden, Joe Pickett, up in Wyoming, that he just writes a great story. That's had a lot of influence on me. I've read all of his books. I think I just finished number 24 last month.
Right.
And he writes in third person and past tense, and that's what I wrote my first book in. I think I'd been listening to a lot of Craig Johnson, CJ Box, but
Yeah.
Craig Johnson, he's the author of the books that the Longmire series is based off of.
Where
Walt
we all
Longmire,
want to go.
right? And he writes in first person, and which is a completely different voice than CJ Box. And I like that too. And so my second book in the series, I broke the rules by switching points of view. I went from third person in the first book to first person in the second book. And I've been writing, right. I've been
Shame
writing
on
first
you,
person
Cam.
ever since. So,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I love writing these books, but I figured it was probably worth it for me to take the risk because I wasn't rocketing towards the New York Times bestsellers. So I'll just start off figure it out my way, and then
All right.
and then
Good,
settle into it as I go. So
good, good.
those two authors had a big influence on my writing. Now, the other genre that is the ones I just enjoy reading so much, but I also think they factor into my books are psychological suspense. And so
Mhm.
authors like Mary Kubica, um, Janelle Brown, Lisa Jewell, Ruth Ware. I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
these authors. And as a matter of fact, I just finished Ruth Ware's latest book last week, and I can't stop reading those. And my second book, Fall Summit, has a lot of psychological suspense mixed in with the action in that book. So big influence on me.
All right. And then what about the prequel that you're working on for next year? Is that going to be first person again or not?
That's a great question. So the prequel is actually the very first book I wrote with Tyler Zahn. And at that time, the main character had a different name, and I was just learning how to write. And I pitched that book thinking I had the world's next big bestseller, and got handed back to me about, oh, I don't know, 75 different rejections.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking, how can these guys miss this great opportunity? But I just rolled on to the next book and the next book after that. It wasn't actually until the third book that I got picked up by this small indie press publisher I'm with now, Black Rose Writing. Uh, and so I went back and I took a look at that very first book, and after, three books later, when I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh, no wonder they didn't publish that book. I see now. And so I took that book apart and rewrote it from scratch, and
Wow.
I just got it back from my editor. What I thought was a finished product, got it back from the editor April 1st with some serious rewriting suggestions that I'm in the middle of right now. I just finished an hour and a half of that before I got on this podcast with you. But it's to answer your question, I changed it to first person for Zahn,
Okay.
and I've got third person for a couple of other characters.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, when your editor got back to you, that was April 1st. That was April Fool's Day. Maybe your editor wasn't really serious. Did you ever think about that?
She turned it
Oh.
around. She turned it around on me. And she's April Fool's Day. She said, "You think that book's ready to go?" So,
Oh, that's a good one. I like your editor already. And who is your publisher? You mentioned it. I didn't quite catch it all.
Black Rose Writing. They're a indie publisher out of Castroville, Texas, and they have a stable of about 450 authors. They put out
Oh,
4 books a week, um, publish 4 books a week. And so they're big for a small publisher, but they're not, the big five. So,
yeah, yeah. But that is big. So 4 books a week, I can't imagine. They're probably booked out the rest of this year and into next year if you're already booking for 2025. So good, good. I'm glad you found a decent publisher. Sounds fine. Well, you mentioned that you had to rewrite some of the things that came from the April Fools, or I'm sorry, April 1st feedback from your editor. But the question is, what are your writing habits? If you just finished some this morning, do you write like every day? What are your habits?
that's an important part of my life, in fact, not just for writing, but for everything else. I'm a big guy on routine, which is tough because my wife is a gal who likes to travel and be spontaneous, and so there's always a friendly dynamic with me wanting to do my things and her wanting us to go out and just do things, But I do. I exercise in the morning as part of my routine. I do some reading in the morning that's part of my routine, and writing is a part of my routine every day. So the writing that I do varies on where I'm at on the book. I tend to have a goal of writing 1,000 words a day when I'm writing my first draft.
Oh,
And
wow.
I say that at the end of 4 months, I'll have about a 90 to 100,000 word first draft. And, if you do the math, that adds up more than to 90 or 100. But within that 4 months, there's going to be 20 days where I can't get that 1,000 words done. So I got a little slop built in there for, time with family and the kids and extraneous stuff that happens.
Yes.
And then
Oh, yeah.
when I finish with that 4 months, I let it sit for a couple of weeks, and then I go back in and I'll rewrite it from the very beginning. I'll just go through and I'll rewrite, and I can usually do more than 1,000 words a day with that, and so that takes about half the time as the first draft did. But it also puts me at like 6 or 7 months, and then I'll send it out to a couple of beta readers to get their thoughts on it. And when I have that in, I'll send it off to the editor and do that. And then another 2-3 months after that. So it takes about a year for me
Yes.
to get a book that I think's ready to go.
Well, it sounds like you're planning ahead. If you've already got August booked and then the prequel for 2025, so you're doing it right. How do you stay motivated? That is really a lot of work. 1,000 words at a sitting, and the goal for every 4 months. How do you stay motivated for all of that?
I don't. That's why the habit and the routine is so important. So a lot of times I am, and I love it when I am motivated, and maybe I want to write more than 1,000, or I've got great ideas, or I know exactly what I want to write next. But sometimes I sit down and I so frustrated I put off that 1,000 words because I'm not exactly sure, what I want to write. And so the fact that I have a box on my to-do list that I have to check off, that's what makes me do it. It's the same thing. Counting's important for me. And so, I run every day. This morning I ran day 901 of running over a mile a day. And
Wow.
I'm not motivated even half the times to go out and run, but I'm on a running streak, so I have to do it. And so I don't know. I think it's important what you brought up first. Habits are more important than motivation in my mind. For me,
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
how it works.
Well, if that works for you, that's the main thing. And that's what we're trying to get to on all of these interviews is as an author, how do you harness that creativity with yet the discipline? Creativity for a lot of people is kind of out there and you wander here and right there and dream it up. But then you need that routine that you've got going. So harnessing the two together really is a challenge.
Well, I'll just, while you were saying that, it reminded me that I would hate for anybody to think that when I'm in the 1,000 words a day phase for 4 months, that there's a heck of a lot of creativity going on. For me, the stuff that comes out 1,000 words a day is not very good. It's just that when I'm done with that 4 months, the next 2 or 3 months of rewriting it, that's where the creativity comes in. It's so much, for me, so much easier to take something
Okay.
that's already on the paper and move it around and change my ideas than it is to have a blank sheet. And so, if anybody wants to try the 1,000 words a day, don't try to do 1,000 good words a day, just 1,000 words.
Just 1,000 of anything. Throw it out there and see what sticks.
Right.
Oh, that's great. But you mentioned getting it on paper. Do you handwrite all of your words, or are you using what? Computer? I don't know. Are you dictating? What? How do you do it?
I write in Word. I do some outlining in Scrivener that helps me with scenes in the book, and sometimes I'll do a little writing in there. They've got kind of a corkboard feature where I can work on plotting. But
Okay.
then once I get going, I write in Word, and I
Okay.
just when I finish, I save it, and then I'll save it on my hard drive. I'll save it to Google Drive, and then every 2 weeks or so, I'll send an email with the document to myself just so I don't lose anything.
Wow. That's double and triple backup. So very smart. Good for you. Good. Well, so if that works for you, and it sounds like quite the process, what advice would you have for people getting started in writing?
Well, the habits and routines that I've already talked about would be one thing. The second thing would be to read about writing. I still read a lot of books on writing. As a matter of fact, that's the name of the famous Stephen King book that I like so much. I've read that 2 or 3 times. But
Okay.
read books about how to write. I find those to be very important. Probably the most important thing that influenced my writing after I got going was joining the group that you're the president of, the Central Colorado Writers.
And
And
you, by the way, are the vice president. So thank you for that volunteerism.
but critique group within the Colorado Central Writers was fundamental to changing my writing, holding me accountable, getting other eyes on my work, and it literally changed my writing style, and
Oh,
I think it exponentially improved my writing. If I was to boil, the one piece of advice to writers starting out is don't make the mistake of trying to do it alone. And I did that for the first 8 months where I was writing. For one, you'll either convince yourself that you're not writing anything good, or two, you'll convince yourself that you're writing the world's next masterpiece, and you might not be. The most important thing you can do is find a supportive group of other writers that are supportive and that they want you there with them, but they're honest and that they will tell you what you're doing right, wrong, and where you need to improve. That, for me, the writing community was the number one thing I didn't know about, and now can't imagine doing writing without.
yeah. And I might just put in a little bit of a plug for this organization. It's ccwriters.org, and read all about it. And Cam and I are both big supporters of the fraternity of authors, writers, and those who just want to fool around and put their toe in the water and see what happens. You don't have to be a pro to join up with the group or get involved in the extra things that the organization really brings to support anyone in the US. It doesn't, or in the world, it really doesn't matter. You don't have to live here in the Arkansas Valley. So thanks for bringing that up. That's
Well,
the end of the advertisement.
well, I just throw one. I was so glad you brought that up because the group, you don't have to need to want to write a book. Maybe you just want to write down some stuff for your
Yeah.
kids and your grandkids to read about your life, or maybe you just want to write short stories, or maybe you just want to be creative a couple times a month. So the advertisement wasn't over. I just wanted to pile on to what you were saying. You don't have to be trying to write the next novel for
Well, I think
it.
our listeners probably get the drift. Join CC Writers today. That's the byline on it. Well, what do you think going forward? You've got a book in August. You've got the prequel next year. In 5 years, where do you want to be with all this? Have you projected all of that?
Well, it depends if you're asking me or if you're asking the Torrens family. When my wife found out how much time I was going to spend each day on this writing effort, she asked me the question, how long are you planning on doing this? And I think I was trying to placate her and I said, well, how about 10 books in 10 years and then move on to something else? And she goes,
Mm.
oh, okay. So five
She
years
could
from now,
buy.
5 years from now, I want to be working on book 10 and hopefully have convinced my wife that, oh, I can keep going for a few more. But
Yeah,
uh,
well, by then all your kids will be out of school and on their own. So it might be 20 books by 10 the next 5 years.
so,
So good, good, good. All right. Well, I tell you what, I so appreciate you having been here. And so much fun always to talk with you, whether we're recording it or not recording it, but always fun, and I appreciate that. I wondered if you had any time, maybe a couple of minutes, that you could share something from one of your books or what you're writing. Kind of your choice.
Well, I do have a copy of False Summit here, and this was the book. I don't know if it's showing up on the screen or not.
It is not. Sorry, it is
Okay.
not.
So this was the second book in the Tyler Zahn series, and it was the one that has a little more psychological suspense than what Stable, the first book, had. And so I thought I'd just read the opening page or two from there. So, are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead.
Okay. A dull bronze lamp illuminates the varnished motel room desk where I am studying my notes from yesterday's Miranda Wrights lecture. Today's class doesn't start for another 2 hours. My phone rings and my eyes narrow as I see Kristee Lee's name across the screen. It's early in the morning for a Kristee call. My gut twists and I hesitate before answering. Why rush to hear bad news? Kristee and I are close, but family close, not lover close. Our 20-plus year age difference, multiple missions together with search and rescue or SAR, and our mutual love of the outdoors have created a bond between us almost as close as the bond I forged with my only daughter. Kristee, everything okay? Just needed to check in with the infamous Z-Man, or should I say Reserve Deputy Sheriff Tyler Zahn. Her voice sounds glib, as if early morning calls are our norm. They're not. Days start early at the Jefferson County Law Enforcement Academy, and I'm still working to weave this new routine with parts of my old one. I laugh. You can keep calling me Z-Man. I haven't graduated yet, but your timing's perfect. Class doesn't start for a couple hours. Is everything all right back there? Last question is a probe, and she'll recognize it. But it's a reasonable question at this hour. I'm stuck out here on the Front Range outside Denver, wallowing through the academy, while she's back in my adopted hometown of Buena Vista, nestled in the Colorado Rockies on the banks of the Arkansas River. I miss home, and I wonder what's bothering Kristee enough to call me at this time of day. Everything's great. Kristee pauses, and I can almost hear the gears turning as she tries to think up things that are great. The snow's melting, so the river's running high, but the tourists haven't figured it out yet, and the town's still quiet. No tourists? Since when does a raft guide think a lack of tourists is a good thing? Kristee pauses again. I need to stop with the small talk and let her tell me what's up. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to guide this year. This declaration jars me. Kristee Lee is the epitome of the outdoorsy generation flocking like Canada geese to Buena Vista. She guides rafts in the summer, runs a snowplow in the winter so she can afford to live in a location that allows her maximum river and mountain time. When she's not paddling, she's climbing or backcountry skiing or raising her hand for a SAR mission. I'll pause there. But that's the first couple of pages of False Summit.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cam. I love it. And for all of our listeners out there, I hope you check out our author today, Cam Torrens. Appreciate you being here at Hello, Ernest at the kitchen table. It's been fun, and I think that's it for now. Any parting comment?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for supporting authors on your podcast and for all the time you put into being a part of the writing community that's been such an important part of my life. Thanks, Gene.
Well, hey, Cam, the feeling is mutual. Certainly appreciate it. Well, for all of our listeners, all we can say is goodbye for now. Thanks for listening to this informal conversation with today's author.
Join us next time as we connect writers and readers around the kitchen table.